I was born the Vestal Virgin daughter of a United Methodist pastor and his organist wife in the wild, woolly hills of West Virginia. And my father was a big-hearted man, and he always had a project person, someone that life had not been very good to, who was down on their luck, who needed somebody to straighten them out and inspire them. And numerous people lived with us because back in the day, the pastor's parsonage was about this far away from the church. And that way, everybody could see what we were doing. And that also meant that our den was the halfway house, the AA meeting room, the battered women's shelter, the drunk tank, and the food pantry. And a lot of times, one of my daddy's project people lived in our den. There was an alcoholic, bearded coal miner there for a while. There was a woman with a passel of kids who couldn't figure out how she kept getting pregnant. And then there was Alma May. Now, Alma May did not live with us. She was a part-time beautician and sheep shearer. And she lived in a broke-down travel trailer set up on cinder blocks with her ne'er-do-well dirt track racer boyfriend named Johnny, whose biggest asset was his beer belly. And the first time I met Alma May, I was about 12 years old, and like most middle school girls, I was obsessed with my appearance. My daddy took me with him to go buy apples at the orchard, and on the way home, we drove way out in the country, past all the sheep fields and past a pond, a pretty big pond. It was a catfish pond. It was a pay by the pound, you catch 'em, you clean 'em, you eat 'em pond. And attached to that pond's light pole by an orange umbilical cord was Alma May's broke down travel trailer. And when we pulled into the front yard there, we noticed that the dirt track racer was parked right in front of the trailer. We got out. Daddy said it was a vintage vehicle. I don't know what that meant, but it sure was old. And it was a mess. I mean, the windshield was all shattered, had all these little holes in it, kind of like gravel had been kicked into it, or maybe it had been hit by a shotgun, maybe. The inside was a mess, too. There were cigarette butts and beer cans all over the floor, and all the foam in the passenger seat was ripped out. But at least the driver's side had a seat belt. The passenger's side just had a roll of duct tape tossed in the seat. Well, we walked around the dirt track racer, and we had to pass all these piles of tires with mosquitoes swarming out of them. And there was a tabby cat nursing kittens behind one of those tires that was right next to the trailer. So I leaned over to pet that kitten just as a big stream of black tobacco juice shot right past where my face had just been. It had left the cheek of her boyfriend, Johnny. Missed me by this much. Now, he clearly wasn't expecting company because his shirt was off. His beer belly was cascading down over his belt buckle. His gold-plated NASCAR chain was all tied up in his chest fur. And his head had been nicked and buzzed so close, why it almost looked like a sheep shearer had done it. And he was so ugly, she must have dated him in the dark. Well, he took one look at my daddy's clerical collar, and he pulled a T-shirt on over that beer belly, and he hollered back in the house there and said, "Alma May, get your clothes back on. Preacher man's here." And then he hopped off the porch, got in that dirt track racer, and squealed gravel all the way to the county road. We went on in the house, and it was nasty. It smelled like stale beer and cigarette smoke. And all the built-in furniture was a grimy yellow. This dumpy redhead pulled herself out of the built-in bed in the back and came out to greet us wearing a tube top. Now let me just say, there is an age past which no woman should wear a tube top. And Alma May, she was on the far side of that river, honey. Well, she came out and she said, "Oh, hey there, preacher. I didn't know you were coming, or I'd have tidied up a bit." And then she told my daddy a sob story the size of a railroad boxcar all about how Johnny'd lost his job and there wasn't going to be any sheep shearing for a while and they were down to their last dime. And all of a sudden I heard my daddy say, well, my daughter needs a haircut. What? No, I do not, Daddy, I said as he took out a $5 bill and Alma Mae snatched it and stuffed it in her tube top. I shook my head no, but she pushed me down on a stool and then slid aside about a 6-pack worth of empty beer cans, took out her sheep clippers and plugged them in, took out a pair of scissors, a comb, and a squirt bottle of water. And then she came over to me and she ran her stained fingernails through my hair. And she said, well, that's going to be a problem. I don't know. Pixie cuts are in style. She might look good in one of them. I don't know, preacher. She's just got bad hair. And then she took a plastic cape and she wrapped it around my shoulders. She squirted water on my hair. And then she picked up that dirty comb and she started running that dirty comb through my hair. And then she picked up the scissors and she started cutting. And every few minutes she'd stop and take a drag off her cigarette and say, that's not right. Let me try that again. When my hair was up over my ears, she said, well, that's about all I can do with that. Turned on her sheep clippers and buzzed down the back of my neck like she was shearing a sheep. And then she moved on to my bangs, which is to say that she moved to the front of my head because I didn't have bangs at the time. When my mother saw my hair, she threw a fit. She said things to my daddy I had never heard her say. And it took months for my hair to grow out. And I had nightmares about my daddy taking me back there for another haircut. But then fate intervened. Big-bellied Johnny, he punched an off-duty cop in a bar while he was carrying a concealed weapon, and they sent him to the penitentiary. And then Alma Mae, she passed a bad check. And when Daddy wouldn't post bail, his friend from Rotary, the county judge, he gave her 90 days after my mother told him about my haircut. And Daddy finally gave up on her. Alma Mae was one of his few Project People failures. Poor Daddy. But once Alma Mae was safely in jail, he got another project person, a newly released mental patient that he hired to catalog and alphabetize his sermons. He liked to draw on the walls and the furniture, and he talked to people we couldn't see, but at least he didn't cut hair. And after a few months of alphabetizing and reading my daddy's sermons, why, he was right as rain. Which just goes to show you that all you really need sometimes is just a big-hearted person to believe in you, to straighten you out, so you can let your little light shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine.